Hi, it's Mr. Mabry, and we're going to take some notes on asexual reproduction. Now, as we're going through these notes, I know you're going to be thinking to yourself, this is so lame. We have a cool way of reproducing as humans and it has nothing to do with asexual reproduction. Why should I even be learning about this? Well, you need to remember, this method of reproduction we're going to learn about has some benefits to it that we can't compare to. And that's what you need to keep in the back of your mind. Why would any organism bother reproducing in this manner? So to start, let's make the umbrella. This umbrella, this reproduction umbrella, is a summary picture of comparing and contrasting asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. So if you want to pause the video real quick, copy it down, and then I'll talk about it. Okay, I'm assuming you've got the umbrella copied down. Let's talk. Asexual reproduction comes from the root word sexual, meaning with two, and a, which is negating the word. So literally means not sexual reproduction. So this is reproduction only involving one parent, compared to sexual reproduction, meaning you need at least two. When you reproduce asexually, you get identical DNA. When you reproduce sexually, since you have two different partners or organisms involved, you're always going to get a mixture of different DNA than the original parents had. Now, there are lots of different types of asexual reproduction. We're just going to focus on this set of notes on binary fission, something called budding, and something called fragmentation or regeneration, depending on who you talk to. After this set of notes, we're going to dive into three different types of sexual fertilization. Again, there's a lot more different types than just these. We're going to talk about internal, external, and egg-laying sexual reproduction. Now, before we can jump, though, for this section of our notes into these right here, we need to talk about the difference between bacterial cells and our cells. So we're going to make a quick T-chart of the two main cell types. So the next thing I need you to write down is we're going to make a column and a list of prokaryote cell type characteristics and eukaryote cell types. So here we go. Prokaryote cells come from the roots pro, meaning before, and karyon, meaning kernel. So this is an early cell type. And the people who discovered these in the 1800s, they thought, oh, these must be the most basic early cells. Compared to the root word eukaryote, eu meaning good, and karyon still meaning kernel. So prokaryote are the basic or the early kernel, eukaryote are the good kernel, the awesome cell type. Now, the most distinguishing characteristics about prokaryote cells is their lack of nucleus, compared to the eukaryote cell type that you and I are familiar with, and that's the one that contains a nucleus. And because prokaryote cells don't have a nucleus, they're very basic in structure. Contrasting to prokaryote cells are the eukaryotes, which are very complex in structure. And the reason these are so simple in structure is because they don't have a nucleus and they don't have a lot of the complex organelles that we learned about last unit. Contrasting to the eukaryote cell, which does have those organelles. For instance, eukaryote cells, they've got the ribosomes, they've got the rough and smooth endoplasmic reticulum, the chloroplast, the mitochondria, all these really fancy organelles. Because the prokaryote cell, it just has some loose DNA, it's very simple with no organelles, it uses a method called binary fission to reproduce. Contrast to the eukaryote cells, doing a process called meiosis for reproduction. Because it's so simple and has no nucleus, they tend to be smaller, and these tend to be bigger cells. I think the best way, now that's our exhaustive list, so you can stop there. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items on the left, contrasted to 6 items on the right. If you think about these in terms of cars, this is probably what a prokaryote cell would look like. It looked like this really basic white car. It's not real fancy. Maybe it has air conditioning, definitely no cruise control, maybe automatic windows, probably shakes when it's going 65 miles per hour. Here's the Ferrari of cells type, the eukaryote cells. Goes fast, it's efficient, it's got all the bells and whistles. That is the type of cell types that you and I have. The most common organism that are prokaryotic cells are bacteria. And you need to know the difference between these two because we're going to call those differences into play as we talk about what method of organisms use asexual reproduction. To further illustrate the point, Here's a picture of a basic prokaryotic cell right here. You can see there's not a lot going on. There's some loose DNA, some ribosomes floating around. Contrasting here to the eukaryote cell. My goodness, look at all this action going on. We got a nucleus protecting our DNA. We got our, what are these little mitochondria, little chloroplasts here, little Golgi apparatus, some endoplasmic reticulum. You can see this is a real fancy Ferrari type cell. So now that we understand the difference between these cell types, let's talk about asexual reproduction. Okay, so let's write down as a heading on your paper now, asexual reproduction. And the first type we're going to talk about as your next subheading is binary fission. Binary fission is the method of choice for single-celled organisms like bacteria, which we just talked about with prokaryote cells, and even little single-celled eukaryotes called amoeba. There's some things called paramecium, and it's pretty simple. Binary fission is just splitting into two. And if you can remember this, because let's get our pen out here. Bi meaning two, fission means to split, so literally split into two. And I'd like you to go ahead and draw this right here, this picture. I'll circle it for us in your notes. Feel free to pause the video if you want to draw, but you can see it's pretty simple. You have one cell, has to copy its DNA, then it makes a little sort of butt cell right here as it gets bigger, and then it finally splits into two. And the key here is both cells at the end are identical to the parent cell that started it. And here you can see an actual picture of a bacteria dividing into two, frozen in time as somebody caught this on a microscope, then stained it in color so we could see it. So that's binary fission. Now, something cool about binary fission is it doesn't take a lot of time to do this. In fact, under ideal conditions, bacteria can double every 20 minutes. You don't need to write that whole paragraph down on your paper if you just want to say 20 minutes turnaround time. So that's really cool because you can see, like, look, 1 goes into 2, 2 goes into 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. Bacteria take over the world. Let's watch this short 10-second clip about bacterial reproduction.
Bacteria reproduce very simply and rapidly by doubling their contents and splitting in two. Just one bacteria, dividing every 20 minutes, could produce nearly 5,000 billion bacteria in one day.
Whoa, I don't know if the video caught that sound, but it said bacteria dividing every 20 minutes, which you're seeing on the screen, could produce 5 billion bacteria in 24 hours. Insane! Fortunately, that rarely happens because as they grow here, eventually they sort of stagnate because they run out of food, or they run, into stuff, or stuff starts to eat them, or they just, all their bacterial poop gets everywhere and they just stop growing. So fortunately, our world's not overrun by bacteria. All right, next subheading is budding. Budding is a form of asexual reproduction, and it's similar like binary fission, but you're seeing here, it just grows off of your parent's body. So it's just sort of like, I'm budding off your shoulder. And you can see here a little hydra just sort of bloop buds off right there, or like on the cactus, it just sort of like bloops, like grows off the edge. So budding's sort of self-explanatory. There's a little yeasty coming off a little fungus right there, right? See how he's just sort of budding along. So that's budding, real similar to binary fission, except one is very clearly the parent and one is the offspring. And then our third type we're going to talk about, some people call it fragmentation, some people call it regeneration. This is your third subheading under asexual reproduction, and it is when offspring come out of broken off pieces of the parent, and then it just grows. So here you see like this wormy, he got cut into 3, and all of a sudden we have 3 wormies. Oh, gross. Or you've probably heard before about starfish. You cut their arm off, and if you cut off in the right spot, a whole new starfish will come out of it. Or you can see here in a similar fashion, a coral, you break off a piece of coral, if you break off the right piece, another whole organism of coral will grow off the broken piece. So those are the 3 different types of asexual reproduction that I need you to know. Binary fission, which you can do by like this. See, ooh, bacteria, whoop, 2 bacteria. Or you're budding, like, I'm just growing a little baby off my shoulder. Or fragmentation, regeneration, like, my finger, and then my finger grows into a whole new me. Mammals don't regenerate or fragment. Lizards do, some plants do, some different things in the ocean do. These are sort of the main ones. Maybe even you've heard before of plants. You can cut off a piece of a plant and then you can like graft it onto another plant and it'll grow. So these are the things that I need you to know for asexual reproduction. When you watch part 2 of these notes, we're now going to learn about the different types of sexual reproduction, and then we'll compare what's so powerful about asexual reproduction compared to sexual reproduction and vice versa. Good job!